Okay, so now you found your candidate, you know what the responsibilities of sponsorship is, and now let's talk a little bit about the application. The mystical process of how an application gets from point A to point B. So there's two ways that applications right now can be processed. One is the paper process. I'm going to run through that real quickly, and then I'll talk about the electronic process. So the candidate or the sponsor can fill out the application. Please write clearly so I don't make mistakes when I'm putting it into the database. Certain fields that are really important: the name that they want on their name tag, an email address, because a lot of communications now are through email, their marital status, more if their spouse has already made a weekend or their spouse is going to be on one of the other weekends. So this time we've got a lot of husband and wives that the applications came in at the same time. And if they've got limitations, physical or dietary, so the team can best serve them and they can have the best weekend possible. Whether they're Catholic or not, and what parish they're attending, or if they're searching for a new church. Then secure a deposit. And this can be palanqued by the sponsor, or it can be from the candidate. Mail to the P.O. box. Please, we're going to ask not to have applications hand-delivered or deposits hand-delivered to somebody to ensure that they get to the Pre-Curcio chair. If they go to the mailbox, we know that they're there. And I'm going to talk about in a second why a postmark is important. And I receive the applications from the post office box. Then I enter them into the database. And then I will, if a deposit's included, I move them from an applicant to a candidate. And then I'll send out an email confirmation to the candidate and the sponsor saying that your application's been received and it's been processed. And then I send the checks off to our treasurer. So now for electronic process. So pretty much the same. You go into the website, you click on the application link and go through the same of what name do you want on the name tag, having an email and their marital status, their limitations, and then in the comments, if there's something important that's relevant to the candidate that we would need to know. For example, we'll have a candidate on Kim's weekend who's blind, and her sponsor was able to put in a lot of information on how to work with her and her service dog. So that was extremely helpful. And then securing the deposit. So after you've finished filling out the form, you can either print it and mail it with a deposit or mail the deposit separately. I'll get the check from the post office box, and then the same process again. I acknowledge, move it from an applicant to a candidate, send an email confirmation, and then send the check to be deposited. So why is the deposit important? Why is it linked to moving a candidate from an application to a candidate? And part of it is that it actually states it on the top of the application that a deposit should accompany, but also in the cases where we start having a lot of applications come in, it helps prioritize who's going to be moved to a candidate. So if we have a deposit and an application, that person could leapfrog over somebody who doesn't have a deposit in. And then again, with the postmarks, if I get 10 applications in one day, whose came in first if I'm only going once a week? So use the postmark to determine the order in which the applications were received. Now there's another aspect that we consider when moving an applicant to a candidate, is if a husband is on the men's weekend and the wife has an application in, we save space on those weekends so the wives can also make their weekend at the same time as the man. And then we also have scholarships. And our community has been blessed to be able to offer partial and full scholarships to the candidates. When considering asking for a scholarship, please look at the true need. Cursillo doesn't want money to stand in between receiving the joys of the weekend or not. At the same time, if we deplete the funds through abuse, that'll disable the community from continuing to offer scholarships. So tonight I brought with me the newest application where we've put all the fields match what's online, and we have some additional information at the top. And I already said that. I've got copies available, and if you have any of the old applications, recycle them. Just get them out, start using the new one. And then also, because we have the online opportunity to do an application, Secretariat will be introducing, hopefully with the new website, an electronic way to put the deposit in or pay for the weekend. And then moving forward, that having to mail a check will be alleviated. So the last thing I'd like to address is what happens when a candidate drops from a weekend or is not available for the next weekend closest at hand. When a candidate has postponed, they're automatically moved to the next weekend unless they specify that they can't make that next weekend. And then they'll be moved to the following one that they are available for. So when teams are forming, the pre-Cursillo chair, me, starts reaching out to those candidates that have pushed to the next weekend to find out if they can make that weekend, and I give them a deadline to respond. And this request is a firm decision of getting a firm decision from them early is necessary to understand exactly how many open spots we're going to have for any given weekend. And a candidate that has pushed is given 3 opportunities to attend a weekend. And after those have passed, that candidate then will contact us when they're ready. So the pre-Cursillo chair will stop contacting them and let them contact us. And their original deposit will be honored regardless of when they do their weekend. So I've given you a lot of information. The slides and these recordings will be available on the new website. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Are you redoing the application to work at Cursillo?
The question is, are we redoing the application to work a Cursillo? We haven't looked at that. Okay. Afterwards, if there's a specific concern, let us know what that is. Any other questions?
I just have a comment. When I made my weekend a few years ago, in the sponsor, it says to fill in who your sponsor is, and my sponsor was somebody who's not in the area, and I tried to punch her name in, and it wouldn't let me complete the application. So then I just punched in Mary Grunthaner, and I was able to complete it. So somebody within our system, apparently. So I don't know whether that's still the case or not, but if you have a sponsor out of the area who might not have made their Cursillo here.
Okay, so the comment, in case it wasn't picked up on the recording, is that when you went to put your application in online and you went to choose a sponsor, it was somebody out of the area, so you weren't able to do that.
Right.
So you did find somebody within the area.
Right.
And is that going to change? Or is there a way to get around that?
Yeah.
And right now, I had a perfect example today, is the person who's sponsoring made their Cursillo in 1972 in San Francisco.
Mm.
So I created a record for that individual.
Yeah.
So in those cases, when you're finding somebody wants a sponsor that's not in the area, we can create a record for them in the database, and then in the comment section I can put that they made their Cursillo elsewhere, and we can do that. So, okay, yes, behind you first.
Okay. On the application, the new application, did you put a spot in for a co-sponsor? Still a small space to fill in when you need to add a co-sponsor. There's no.
Did we do
spot.
co-sponsor? The question was, is there a spot to put co-sponsor on the form? Did we do that?
We have not addressed that yet. The new application is kind of a recent iteration. We're
Yeah.
still working on it because eventually we're going to, as part of the new database or website,
I think it's
we will
needed, so
put,
we can
Yeah.
address that.
put something in that could have as a co-sponsor, like something.
Okay, so the overall comment is we need to address having space for co-sponsor on the application, online and paper. So that currently isn't there. Yes.
So, in one of the first slides that you had mentioned that, the rules or guidelines that you're not allowed to sponsor, until a year, and so I was curious why that was.
So you have an opportunity, so the question is why to wait a year before a person should sponsor. In that, so you have an opportunity to understand what Fourth Day is about, attend Altreyas, and become more embedded into the community, so then you, to your new candidate, can emulate to them what the life of a Cruceista is beyond Cruceo. What does that look like? And if you've just completed your weekend, and you've only had a month or two because the next weekend's coming up, haven't necessarily had enough time. There's some people who are going to be different because they've been around a lot of Cruceistas, but if we use it as a guideline, there's exceptions. But the general is so you have that opportunity to just grab onto all that love, so then you can go, oh, I've got this great thing for you. Any other questions? Are we good?